What up, what up, what up?
Hey!
The star of the show is back.
Oh, you're talking about you? Oh, okay, that's cool.
Who's the star?
That's you, Renee.
You.
And then my other favorite, James.
Other favorite James.
Other favorite James. Okay. You're good in that, I can tell.
Well, welcome everyone to another episode of Breaking Into Cybersecurity, CISO Thursday. Our honorary CISO for today, Mr. James McQuiggan. I would say, I don't like to call him my other favorite James, but if I had to choose, what would I do?
It's hard.
It's hard, exactly.
Put yourself in there. Don't do it.
Welcome back, Renee. How are you doing?
My teeth hurt.
Thank you for sharing.
I'm back. I have Invisalign, folks, so if you hear the lisp, that's what's going on.
Good for you.
See, I have a face for radio and it shows.
You too?
Yes. Me too. So, our honorary guest today, Mr. James McQuiggan. Give our audience a brief background on yourself, and then we'll get the show on a roll.
Brief background. Holy cow. So I'm a security awareness advocate over at KnowBe4. It's not probably, it is a dream job where, get to go around and talk to people about cybersecurity, which goes in line with the other side hustle that I have going on, where I'm a college professor trying to help educate the next generation of security professionals. Here in town, I teach a cyber ops course, cybersecurity operations course, and that's a lot of fun. But prior to being at KnowBe4, I spent 18 years working for this little German company called Siemens. Had a variety of different roles with them over those 18 years, everything from building applications, database administration, networking, network security, and then got into cybersecurity, which led me into security awareness and training, product security, and it just went on and on from there. It was a lot of fun working there for 18 years. Prior to that, I worked for a major computer manufacturing company, rhymes with Bell. Did help desk for them for about 3 years for an outsourcing company. That was kind of my foray entrance into working in IT, doing help desk. And I think everybody should have to start at help desk just because it builds troubleshooting skills and customer service skills and dealing with angry people. So it was a lot of fun. But prior to that, 6 years I spent working professionally in, believe it or not, theater. I worked lighting, sound designing, lighting designing, and stage management. Had a lot of fun working for an opera company, several opera companies. So it was a lot of fun. But nowadays I'm a happy dad, a IAC Squared chapter president, KnowBe4 security awareness advocate, a professor, and a photographer too. So
look at that. I learned something about you every day. So for folks just jumping in today, this is Breaking Into Security, CISO Thursdays. For those of you on LinkedIn, follow myself, James, and Renee. For those of you on YouTube, hit that subscribe button and then the notification button. That way the next time we pop up, we're there. For those of you on Twitch, thank you for following us on Twitch as well as on Twitter Live. We're just expanding this multimedia conglomerate here. Don't worry, we're like the DevOps project set up on a twig, so we're all going here. And shout out to our audience. Feel free to shout on in, tell us where you're coming from and where you're viewing, and if you have any questions for Mr. McQuiggan. Thanks, Stephen, for joining us from beautiful San Diego.
He's always here. I love Stephen.
I'll be out on the West Coast next week.
I have a question. How did you get from being in operas on stage, in that space, to IT?
Took a wrong turn. No. Steal that line from a buddy of mine, Mr. Shields. No, well, the funny thing was this all goes back to high school. When I was in high school, there were two things that I was really interested in: theater and computers. And at that time in the late 80s, computers, a lot of it was all programming, Turbo Pascal, BASIC and all that. And it was fun, but it just didn't really have a strong enough interest. I was comfortable playing on computers and programming and doing that stuff, but it wasn't a passion. And so when I graduated high school, I went and studied theater and then went and worked in theater. And I got about 6 years into the career, and it was fun. I absolutely, truly enjoyed it. But the lifestyle, nights, weekends, long hours, we do it now anyway, but it was just the lifestyle wasn't what I wanted to have for a family. And I know that there are successful people out there that work in theater and have been successful in that lifestyle, and that's great. For me, it was a decision where it wasn't something I wanted to do if I was going to get married and have a family. So I stepped back and kind of went back to that decision that I had in high school. And what I ended up doing, I still had an interest in computers. So what I did was I took an A+ certification course at the local college where I was in Texas. And that kind of, reawakened that interest in computers. And what I found that I really liked doing was building them. I liked assembling them and troubleshooting them. And, back then it was loading Windows 95 and 98. And that led me to working at the help desk and spent 3 years there. I worked my way up from level 1 tech, level 2, and then became a manager, which looking back, it was because there was a very, very high turnover rate in the help desk because it burned a lot of people out. They didn't, you're working an 8-hour shift getting yelled at the entire time. And so it kind of builds character a little bit. But at that point, it was just a matter of, getting an A+ certification, getting some experience. And then I got the job at Siemens, where I was working on databases for about a year and learning how to do more coding. And then I did continued my 10-year plan, went back and got my Bachelor of Science in Information Technology. And that helped me a little further with working at Siemens, and got into working in applications and working in networking. And networking, there was a lot of fun there too. But it wasn't until I get into our corporate security office that the passion really came forward.
Are you saying in cybersecurity, there's no nights and weekends and high level stress?
Didn't say, I realized when I said that, I'm like, but there is that. We do have that stress level and the craziness. And I mean, I saw an article this morning that a third of the workforce wants to drop out because of the long hours, the lack of compensation, the lack of appreciation from organizations. And it made me realize it was a lot like the role of a stage manager in a production. The role of the stage manager is they're there from the very beginning in production meetings, all through rehearsals, documenting everything, communicating with everybody, kind of like a program manager. But it's a thankless job because if anything goes wrong in the show, they're coming after you. If something goes wrong, they're yelling at you. And if everything goes right, they're like, okay, great job. So I see that a very similar pattern there, and a lot of folks being frustrated. But getting into cybersecurity and the role and seeing the long hours and everything else, I'm like, when you truly enjoy doing what you do, it's hard to call it work, but I do know, especially on the CISO level, a lot of folks get burned out. A lot of folks don't call it fun, but there are some out there that do, and it's good to see.
You already had the character built in from the help desk, right?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, having people yell at me and having people tell me that my product sucks. I'm just like, hey, one of the things I learned early on, and this is from a customer service standpoint, early on was, they're not yelling to you. They're more or less yelling at you. They're not yelling at you because you're incompetent. They're yelling at you because you represent the company. You're the front line. And if you can take it and just let it roll off the back like like water off a duck's back, then you can get through that. And a lot of the time people were just angry and they wanted their problem solved, and I think we see a lot of that with InfoSec. People are upset, something's not working or something breaks, and they're angry at the situation. And so it's a matter of just having to work through that and figure it out and go, okay, well, here's how we're going to fix it.
Perfect. Let's make some more shout outs. Hey, Jim from Tulsa, Oklahoma. Then we have Basir from Virginia. Then we have Bob Henderson saying cheers. And then Mohammed making reference back to the one man that shut the internet down for North Dakota. And yes, I do recall that happening. So, James, as you're focused on raising awareness about all the threats, how do you keep up with all the threats to keep everyone else aware of it?
A lot of that, ironically, comes from doing a lot of reading every day. I'm pulling in Wall Street Journal articles. I'm looking on tweets. I'm looking on LinkedIn. I have an RSS feed that I'm connected into a variety of publications. And shameless plug, he's not here, but shameless plug for our good buddy, Mr. James Azar, the Cyber Hub podcast, the practitioner brief he does every morning. Early on, or in the last several years, a lot of the information I get on a daily basis, I'll check out the podcast, let that play, and just kind of hear those topics. Had the honor and pleasure of being on a couple of his episodes, and I think I filled in for him once or twice. But yeah, a lot of it comes from, like I said, my RSS feed, looking at podcasts. There's a couple of great podcasts that are out there on a daily basis that give you updates. But then also just, chatting with colleagues, chatting through LinkedIn, through Twitter, and then supporting all of that comes out of the, working with the chapter that I have here, that I'm a part of here in Central Florida.
James, you said that you heard from, or some research that was done recently, is that a third of practitioners are ready to leave the industry, or was it a third of CISOs?
It was a third of practitioners. I didn't get all the way through the article, and I can dig it up and share it with you afterward. But a lot of it was practitioners. It wasn't CISOs directly, okay. But it was people that are working in the industry that are frustrated. And we all know how we're trying to get more people coming into this industry. Now, this was out of 1,000 different practitioners that were working. So it was interesting, but it was kind of alarming to me that, here we've got people working, but they're getting burned out. They're either not able to take the necessary time off because of work shortages. I mean, I know a lot of organizations now are suffering work shortages where they can't get the people in. And so I know that's probably going to be a hot topic next week at the RSA conference. A lot of people walking around and talking about that, trying to get more people into the workforce and then trying to retain the ones that we've got. And if we're burning them out, then, it's not going to be, it's going to be even harder to retain folks. And I know that's always been an interesting topic in a variety of different webinars and podcasts and live events where people have all the ideas to, be able to try and retain their employees, make sure that they're appreciative, making sure that they're compensated properly, that you have management that work with them to make sure that if, they're checking in with them every day, especially when we're working remote. You've got so many folks that are working remote, even post-COVID. And, it's important that you have that communication. I know some people, they don't want to hear from their bosses, but as long as they're being productive, then great. But a lot of the times as humans, we like that social interaction. And so to be able to at least communicate with team members or your boss every day is certainly a key element to being able to have a comfortable work environment where people feel appreciative, whether it's hearing from the management, getting kudos, being recognized. I know personally people like to be recognized for good work, and whether that's financially or a pat on the back or stickers or trips or days off or whatever that takes. But that's also comes down to the culture of the organization as well, and being able to look at that and see how they address, being able to take time off, working remotely. I mean, yesterday, I think a lot of us probably saw the article at Tesla, where they're not going to allow any remote work. You got to be working from at the office or you're fired. So, you got to look at that culture and see, okay, do I want to work there? And
I need to start calling into the Tesla people.
What's that?
She said she has to calling in.
Coach time. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But you look at that and go, so if you're comfortable working in an office all the time, then okay, good. But if you're somebody that wants to work remote and you see that that's not an option, well, then you don't want to be applying that.
Yeah. I mean, I saw some of that on Twitter, some of the responses, and people just automatically jumped into good luck. Like, you're not going to, the talent is going to walk away in this current environment. And yes, there are roles that need to be in person, but minimum 40 hours a week. I was like, is he serious? Because, he flips off, he does stuff. Is he for real? OMG.
Professor Roger White says management sometimes does not add value, so we don't like talking to them.
Oh, yikes.
If you got management that's not adding value, then you don't want to be working for them.
My goodness.
And it's, I know for me in the past when I've worked for, I've been extremely fortunate. The managers that I've worked for have been fantastic. Some have gone on to become really good friends. But I've had my fair share of managers that it was difficult to talk to. And so that was my cue that, well, look, if I can't communicate, it's a two-way street. So if I can't communicate with you and we can't have conversations and you're just going to yell at me, or you're not going to listen to anything I say without any type of feedback, then I'll just go work elsewhere.
Right. Easier
said than done. I get it. But that was my cue where I said, okay, time to start looking elsewhere.
Ericon says currently enrolled in a cyber boot camp, but lost motivation halfway through. After listening to your podcast, I became remotivated. Well, thank you very much, Ericon. James, you're on both ends of the spectrum. On one hand, you're teaching the next generation, and then on the other hand, you're working with established organizations to drive their awareness and drive their culture. Where's some of the disconnect between what students are looking for in their careers and what organizations are looking for in their employees?
Yeah, when you start looking at the students and their interest to get into the organizations, and then you've got employees in organizations that are having to learn about cybersecurity hygiene, those kind of things. It's interesting with the students, they're hungry. They have a desire, because they're paying for it, to learn as much as they can. They become sponges. And I know with a lot of my students, one of the things I bring to my, we'll say, lectures is what goes on in the real world. We'll talk about real world events. One of the things that I do, we talk about phishing. Now, for a while there, I was actually going through and phishing my students, but then the program ended. But it was interesting to see where my students were starting to realize, hey, this doesn't look right. And they would send it to me going, are you phishing us? Is this one of the phishes you were telling us about? But since that time, when I'm not able to phish them, but having conversations with them, talking about what goes on in the real world, One of the things that I do with my students is we do a demo of a ransomware attack. And I actually take one of my virtual machines and infect it with ransomware. And just to give them the insight of how quick a ransomware attack happens. Once they start the ransomware encryption process, it's seconds, and depending on the size of the data, it may take a couple minutes. But to give them that experience and give them that understanding, when you start talking with employees or users within organizations, they may not care. They may go, fine, I'll do the training just because I have to, but that doesn't mean I have to care. And so there's you kind of have to take that next step and start working with the security awareness folks for that organization to say, okay, what do we need to do to look at getting the culture right here within the organization? What do we got to do to step it up? For me, my perspective when it comes to users and organizations is everybody has a key to the front door for your organization. Anybody that's got an email address can click on a link and effectively let the cyber criminals in through the front door and bypass all the technology. Now, the technology is there to either stop it in the first place with your spam filters and secure email gateways. But then if it does get through and a user ends up clicking on it, then hopefully you might have a SOC or an MSP that's got a security operations center, an SOC, a SOC, that can at least monitor and try and track that down and reduce the risk there. But then you have smaller organizations that can't afford that or don't have that, and they end up falling victim to it. And so those are almost the organizations that are more critical, that have to be a lot more alert and aware. And it's difficult because they're so focused on their work, they don't have time for that cybersecurity stuff. It's fine. If a cyber criminal got in, they wouldn't get much of our stuff anyway. But a lot of the times, if they do get in, it's those trusted connections that they're going to go after or try to shut them down. Now I'm getting back to computer networking.
No. Here we go. Carrie says she's trying to break into technology and thought cybersecurity was the way to go. And now I'm getting back into computer networking, just trying to get into the field. Carrie, I would say computer networking is a great foundation to get into cybersecurity. It becomes one of those things that will help spur your cybersecurity career because it's something that connects everything together.
Yeah, I mean, what Kerry's trying to do, with getting into computer networking is, I agree, is that good, strong foundation. But there's so many different aspects within cybersecurity. One of the other things to do is to talk with other people. If you've got any local meetup groups, cybersecurity groups, ISSA, ISC Squared, ISACA, there's the CSNP, the cybersecurity nonprofit groups. There's a lot of different groups out there where you can go out and meet up with them. Worst case scenario, if you've got somebody that's in your community, take them out for a coffee, take them out for a beer, sit them down, have a conversation. One of the big ways, and I know I've heard it here many times before, and I continue to do it, especially because I work with the chapter here in town, but get networking with people, get meeting people. If you got a B-Sides event in your area, go to that and just meet people. Granted, sometimes for some of us, it's not that easy. We're really uncomfortable, but you just got to start with one person and have that conversation. I was at a conference last weekend. I was completely out of my comfort zone. It dealt with podcasting, and there weren't a lot of tech podcasts and there weren't a lot of cybersecurity podcasts. There were all these other people that were podcasters, but for me, it was like, okay, I'm going to have to start networking with these people, start building these connections. And sometimes it just starts with one, you find a little connection, you start having a conversation, and then it goes from there. It's not an immediate return of investment, so to speak. When you start networking, it is something that you have to build up and it takes time. It took me 9 years of connections with people to get where I am with KnowBe4, and with the school here. Some people, I've had chapter meetings where somebody said, hey, I'm coming into town. I'm moving to Florida and trying to meet people. I said, yeah, come along to the chapter meeting. He ended up coming to the meeting, met somebody that was actually hiring technicians, security folks, He ended up chatting with him at the meeting, just happened to be sitting beside him, chatted it up, discovered he had a job opening. He applied. 3 months later, he moved down because he got the job working there because of that networking opportunity. Not every time is that going to happen. It could take 9 years. It could take 10 minutes. It's just going to depend. But networking is a great way to be able to build up those resources, build up those connections, especially like on LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever, wherever else you want to do that. You end up going to a physical conference, and then you may get to meet some of the people in person, and again, strengthen that networking and that connection.
I think I met you in Florida.
We did
7 or 8 years ago at an ISSA chapter event.
ISSA South Florida event. I was running for the ISSA board, and I knew the guy. I know the guys, or knew them, that was running that chapter. I said, "Hey, mind if I come down and just be there and kind of say a few words?" It was worth the however long 3.5, 4 hour drive it took for me to get down there, because I got, honestly, Christophe, one of the things was we met and we've kept the connection going over the years. I still keep in touch with the ISSA South Florida guys, but that connection, being on here with you and just keeping communications open and chatting. So, hey, you never know.
So James, when you, going back to that, I'm always very, very, very interested, obviously, in retention, recruitment. With the retention piece, it's very interesting. And I know you didn't get to read the full article, but were there things that outside of burnout, were there other areas that that the article talked about as to why people would want to leave?
Some of the other items dealt with training. You get hired to come in and do a job.
Yeah.
And that's great. But our jobs are constantly evolving, especially in networking, social engineering. Each technology, whether you're information technology, information security, there's new things that are coming about all the time, and you should be able to get training. And I remember working at one particular place where they were trying to cut budgets, and the first thing that went was training. And I was like, okay, all right, we're trying to save money. That's fine. It was a large company and made a lot of money, but they were trying to cut budgets. And so training was always the first to go. And that was always frustrating. In the training, you can go and take some courses that are $5,000, $6,000, $8,000, $10,000 for the week. You can spend $3,000, $2,500 to go to a conference. You could spend $50 and go to a B-Sides event. And so the cost is going to vary. But if you don't provide an opportunity for your users, your employees, to get educated, especially in our field, you don't allow them opportunities to be able to keep growing and training. I mean, it could be even something as simple as saying, we want you to work 7 hours every day, whether you work an 8-hour, 10-hour, whatever hour day. But you could have a policy within your organization where you go, for 1 hour every day, you're going to take that time to either read, do research, something that's going to grow. We'll pay for you to have a Try Hack Me account. I mean, they're $8 a month. Something where you're going to take an hour out of every day to learn something new, to educate yourselves, whether it's reading a book, taking a training class, and it can be something as simple as that without having to spend the tens of thousands of dollars, for an official week-long training course. There are things you can be doing every single day. I know for me, I take an hour every day and I'm reading through Wall Street Journal cybersecurity articles. I'm looking at my RSS newsfeed, listening to podcasts, reading, I've got a variety of different books that I'm reading, going through and reading those just to kind of better myself on top of that. And if management can support that and get behind that, then that can at least help you grow that much more as an employee.
Right. And this has been, I'm always curious, because it seems like the training component has been consistent for a number of years. And it used to be, I know burnout, obviously, with this current situation is a little bit different, coming out of COVID, but the training component seems to have been, I think I've been off and on tracking this for 10 or so years now. And it's been kind of consistent, and it's still the main reason, one of the top 3 reasons why people are either before it was leaving their jobs. Now
Right.
it's just straight leaving the industry, which is
That's gut wrenching. Yeah.
right and sad and just so preventable.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, what do you think are what do you think the barrier or the gap or like what's missing where executives, leaders, whoever that makes a decision on retention and budgets and training are not like connecting the dots?
Yeah, I think a lot of the times people think it's all about the money.
Like,
And
we all know that's not true. Well, many of us know that's not true.
yeah, I mean, I know it plays a significant part, but I know also some people just leave and will go take a pay cut just to get out of that particular toxic work environment, the environment they don't like. Um, you know,
Flexibility as well.
right. I mean, having the flex hours, we're focusing on, the work that needs to be done in what location during what hours versus when does it need to be completed by? What is it, what task is it that you've got going on that can only be done between 9 to 5, Monday to Friday? Can it be done earlier, earlier in the day, later? And I think with everybody working from home, I mean, I know personally for me, every hour I'll get up and get out of my chair, walk around the house or go out to the kitchen, get a snack. But just to get out of my desk, just to get out of my little office that I've got here. And even when I was working in the back in the offices, I would take 5 or 10 minutes, get up, if I wasn't in a meeting or dealing with meetings, but find time, I'd go out and go outside, go for a walk. And here in Florida, it's hot. And, so going out for a walk in the middle of the afternoon, it's like, man, I got to get out, get my vitamin D and get some fresh air. Got to be able to do that. But when you've got management and you've got, upper management that, they're focusing on their budgets, they're focusing on their objectives and whatever else, and just thinking that they've got their employees there to do the work and not recognizing them, not giving them training, not, providing the resources they need to properly do their job. Yeah, you're going to, hopefully they will start looking at it and go, okay, what's going on? What do we need to do to improve it? Or we'll just go find the next person, to do the job. We'll train them up and hopefully they don't leave after 6 months. But I know that that's going to cost a lot more money in the end run. I mean, when I worked at the call center and the high turnover rate that we had just was just surprising to me. Every week we had 30 plus new people coming in to work the desks because the week before we had 20 to 25 people quit. But then you're looking at the time it takes to get them ramped up and get them up to speed. And by the time you get them ramped up, they're like, no, I don't want to do this, and off they go. I got into a management position, but basically I was just managing users and trying to keep them. Made me realize that I didn't like the process of hiring and firing. So I'm much more enjoying what I'm doing now in the education aspect. But it's certainly not an easy task, but you've got to be able to look at your users, your employees, the people that work for you, and make sure that you're taking care of them. Because for me, and the closest that I'm to it nowadays is with running the IAC Squared Central Florida chapter, where I'm working with a team of fantastic volunteers that we have events and we put on the different chapter meetings and trainings and those things. But my role is to support them, whatever they need, get whatever roadblocks out of the way so they can effectively do their tasks and responsibilities. And that's volunteering. Mm-hmm. And what kind of resources, what kind of things can we do, making sure that they're recognized. So if there's that disconnect, then either the management have to kind of reevaluate, and either they're happy with the fact that they have turnover and people leaving. But no, in my opinion, nobody wants to see somebody go, but we're with the great resignation from last year and what we're starting to see now, there's going to have to be a bit of a mind shift to correct that.
As you're talking about that mind shift, and you think about what we need to do to both grow and sustain our industry, why haven't employers been open to alternative ways of introducing individuals to organizations through apprenticeships, through things like that, where they're almost taking a reduced hedge on their bets because you're working from an entry level on up, but you have that loyalty because you're getting that on the job training, you're getting that continuous education from the employer versus trying to continuously poach from their competitors or poach from the market any mid-level or senior talent left out there.
You know, for me, one of the things that I've experienced over the years, and I think apprenticeships would be great, internships would be great, and I think organizations need to do more of them, especially when they're looking for that entry level person. You know, don't be looking entry level, and I'm hoping it's getting better. We know Naomi's out there always flagging those organizations that post for an entry level position with a 5-year CISSP cert to go along with it and all this other experience. But I think, you know, you've got college kids, and I'm seeing it here in Central Florida where there are internships opening up, even through Valencia, the college that I'm at, where they're always looking for internships to get their students out there either in their last semester. But if you can, you know, if you want, we look at organizations over the last several years, and, you know, one of the big issues of our parents' generations was loyalty. You would remain loyal. You'd work for that company for 35, 40, 50 years. And we're certainly not seeing that anymore. Now, are we expecting organizations should be loyal to us? You know, publicly traded companies are loyal to their stockholders. And I've seen that in other organizations. But it's going to come down to whatever that culture is. You know, if you've got a culture that's bringing in interns and growing them and educating them and then having them stay on, and then having that culture where you're recognizing your employees and you're offering the proper compensation and you're providing training, you know, I'll admit that's what I've seen at KnowBe4. The culture, the work culture at KnowBe4 is probably one of the best that I've seen out there in regards to a lot of different organizations. And we're publicly traded. I've worked at other organizations publicly traded, and everything comes down from the top, and you're so disconnected from it. You're just the worker bee in the trenches, being the practitioner, and training gets cut and the bonuses get cut and this, but all of that so that they can make their quotas or make their profits so that the shareholders are happy, and then the upper executives get their bonuses. You know, it's a bit facetious saying that, but, you know, that's kind of, from a practitioner standpoint, that's what a lot of people see. What are the optics looking like? And so a lot of the times people get frustrated with that, and then they're just saying, well, that's it, I'm going to go somewhere else. And they go somewhere else, and they see the same thing there, and then they say, well, forget this industry, and I'm going to go elsewhere. But if you can get organizations where they can start bringing in internships and work with those employees, if your fear is, yeah, but we could train them up and they go elsewhere. Yeah, but what if they stay? If they can stay and work with you in, you know, 5-10 years, you know, and then maybe move on. But because a lot of the times I would see in certain organizations and hear stories talking with colleagues who would be like, yeah, so I was working at the company for 5 years. I left, I went worked at another company for 2 years, came back to the old company and had like a 120% raise than what I got when I left. Mainly because they went somewhere else, got a bump up, came back and got even a bigger bump up. Because if they'd stayed at that company for those other 2 years, the most they would have had would have been 10%. So when you've got that kind of a work environment and you're not allowing to properly grow your users, you know, you're going to certainly run into that kind of frustration with that.
Yeah, I think there's a statistic that says that for every 2 years that you stay at a company, you're losing a potential 50% increase in salary in some roles.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. But that's what's happening today. One of the questions from Carrie is, how can I find apprenticeships? I'm not in college, and I've been taking free classes online to get my computer networking skills going. Carrie, one of the things is the difference between internship and an apprenticeship internships tend to be school-based.
Yeah.
Apprenticeships tend to be funded by some other mechanism. Sometimes you're supported by the government. Sometimes you're supported by organizations who are using state and local grants as well. So I would look up, CyberUp is one organization that does that. If not, you could work with your local, state, and county to see what apprenticeship offerings they might have. Because sometimes they have the funds to do it, they just don't have a provider. And working with them to get a provider could be the easiest way to get you that internship, because now you're just connecting the dots. So that could be something that you could check out.
I like Kerry's comment he had earlier. The hackers are more trained than the good guys.
Yeah.
You know, and the interesting thing about the hackers, and I know, you know, whether it's good guys, bad actors, cyber criminals, whatever you want to call it, however you want to look at it. But the people that are, we'll say, are making the honest living, and the people that are, we'll call, you know, the hackers, the cyber criminals, they both can have a passion. One's just doing it for evil, and the other one's just doing it or for themselves and selfish reasons. The other one's doing it to, you know, make an honest living and everything else. But both of them have that passion where they're constantly learning. They're both learning out new things, taking their own time outside of their work, where they go through and learn, you know, on their own, whether watching YouTube videos, hands-on, buying a bunch of Raspberry Pis and messing around with those, playing with network simulators. And there's a variety of different ones out there. But both have that passion for either learning or wanting to, you know, figure things out, put them back together, figure out how they work. You know, that's kind of, for me, that's always been the definition of a hacker, is somebody that sees something, wants to figure it out, figures out how it all works, takes it all apart, either figures out how to put it back together again, or figures out a better way and does it that way. For me, that's a definition of a hacker. The cyber criminals out there, whether nation state or script kiddies or working for organized crime, you know, those are the ones that are, you know, your cyber criminals that are out there.
That's a great next project, Kerry.
Yes.
Building a NAS out of a Raspberry Pi. One of the things that,
I was going to say, I use mine for my network monitoring and my asset discovery here on my home network. It's great.
I used it to build a Pi hole.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Which allows me to block a lot of ads and a lot of visibility.
Yep. And that's
to
easy.
Others on my traffic.
Yeah, and that's easy to monitor, download, install, configure, get it up and running. Yeah, that's. I got way too many devices, and I'd have to reconfigure them all. So that's and my router I can't mess with my router like that. So that's another story.
Okay. So James, as you think about companies that are looking to offer that cyber awareness, what could they do to build security champions in the organization to help spread that awareness once they have a program in place?
And that's one of my favorite projects that I did when I ran my security awareness program at Siemens 12 plus years ago. The Champions program serves a lot of purposes. And one of my favorite was getting connected with the business. You know, our InfoSec department was corporate security office was quite small. There was only like half a dozen of us inside of an organization that had, you know, 10,000 plus in the US. And we called ours our ambassador program, allowed me to be able to connect with the business and meet everybody and then train and educate one person either from a particular location or in a particular department and help educate them. And then once you had that education and that passion kind of seeped along to them and they got interested in it, then they would do the same thing within their department. Because when you, with a Champions program, because you can't be everywhere, you can't have an InfoSec or an IT person at every single location or every department. This kind of puts a little mini InfoSec person in there to help spread that information. And then I would provide them materials, slide decks, so that they could go into their department meetings and do a quick 5-minute, here's your cyber tip of the month or tip of the week or whatever. And then for me, I would connect with them once a month, and we would do a monthly meeting where I would talk about current events, talk about the latest data breaches and attacks that were going on. I remember talking about the Target hack and the Home Depot and a lot of those early on. But one of my favorite things that I did with them was that when Siemens was a sponsor of Walt Disney World many years ago, our sponsorship was for at Epcot Center was the big golf ball, Spaceship Earth. And behind Spaceship Earth was a series of meeting rooms and a meeting space. And so every year I would coordinate and plan and take those ambassadors. They'd have to ask permission and get funding from their departments to fly down to Orlando and come to this one-day event. And then I would bring in people like the FBI. I'd bring in other special guests to present and give them kind of like a really fun day of security and fun and Mickey Mouse. And because then we would, after, I think we were done around 4, park was open until 9. We let them go and play in the park, and they got to go on rides and see the fireworks. And so, that was another kind of a fun thing to reward them for the work they've been doing on top of, their other work that they did. So for me, the ambassador program, personally running it was great, building the connections, but it also helps spread your message and get it out to the various departments, regions that you have within an organization, and then figuring out a way to do a fun day with them, whether it's you bring them into your location or you do a meetup somewhere or whatever, but try to figure out a way to be able to give back to them. Swag is always a good thing. Everybody loves swag. So, yeah.
Wow. I love that idea. I wish my companies would take me to Disneyland.
Well, it didn't hurt because I live here in Orlando. It didn't hurt that it's in the backyard, so it was easy to go to.
Talk about retention.
Yeah. I never had an advice. I had, out of the 3 or 4 years I ran it, I only had 2 advisors leave the program. So, and I had about 70 of them. So that was great.
Wow.
It was really fun.
Yeah.
It was the one I ended up shifting roles when I was there, and I ended up having to leave that program. And that was the one thing I really, really, really missed. Yeah. So, but next week when I'm in RSA, I'm going to be talking about ambassador programs. Shameless plug.
Shameless plug.
You're going to be talking about what kind of programs?
Ambassador programs.
Ambassador program. Okay.
Yeah. We call them information security advisors. I've heard champions. I've heard ambassadors. Whatever you want to call it.
Right. How to expand your security
reach.
department.
Yeah.
Right.
Spread the culture, spread the awareness, give them a point of contact, because a lot of the time InfoSec could be like, you got to call up and submit a ticket. Well, no, you just go talk to your advisor, your ambassador that you have in your department, and then they come to me. So then it helps funnel and address things. And yeah, that was a really fun program.
Great way to recruit as well.
Yeah.
Some of those people you might find out, they're like, oh, I'm really interested in security.
Yeah.
And could be a future person inside the team. So
I know I started out as one. Before I got into the security office, I got listed as our advisor for my department as I was getting into security, and it was a lot of fun. And then once I got in the office, I was like, "Can I run the program?" They're like, "Yeah, sure, here you go." I'm like, thanks. I had a bunch of ideas, and I just presented them, and off I went. So it was a lot of fun. It was a good time.
Right.
Nice. I love hearing that. And I think I kind of started that way because I started in the help desk like you. And once I found my passion for security, I wanted to get over there as quickly as I could. But there was sometimes not a role, not enough headcount, all the other reasons why. And it took me a while, but I eventually got here. So champions programs are definitely a great way to go.
Definitely.
100%.
Well, James, I know I have to wrap up a little bit early today. I wanted to see if you had any last parting words for today for someone that might be out there listening, looking to get into cybersecurity and potentially looking to follow in your path.
Oh God, no, don't follow my path. No. Yeah, I always preach about networking. I always preach about getting connected with people. we've been saying that. I know we've been saying that for years as well. Education is important. Constantly learning. This is not an industry that stands still. People are writing. There's blogs. There's YouTube channels. There are podcasts. Sorry. Once a month, I release Security Masterminds. I'm the producer of it. I don't do the voice. I just produce it. Have a lot of fun doing it. But again, that goes back to the wanting to constantly learn and networking. The people that I'm bringing on the show are people that I've met over the years and connected with in this industry. And now you get to bring them on a podcast, kind of like Christophe and Renee, what I got to do here today. But yeah, keep up with the education, keep wanting to learn, keep feeding that passion of being in this industry. And if you're feeling frustrated, then go talk with somebody that's in the industry. Maybe there's a different perspective that they might have, or if you can't talk to management, then get with somebody else that's within the organization, or a colleague. Go to a chapter meetup group, something where you can then connect with other people and go, okay, so we're having this major problem with X product or this organization, or my boss does this. You never know who you might run into that might be able to provide you a working solution that'll make things better for you. But hopefully not to the point where people want to get out of the industry.
Well, if you're feeling that way, at least talk to a recruiter. Maybe the recruiter can help them find another role.
Yeah,
at a company with better culture. Call Renee. Well, with that, everyone, thank you. For those of you following us on LinkedIn, follow myself, James, and Renee. For those of you following us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button and that notification button. And for everyone everywhere else, listen, share, give us 10 stars or 5 stars and a great review. Thank you very much, and have a great Thursday, everyone.
Take care.